because of his political goals.
The mood of America was captured by the President and his entire cabinet attending church in Washington. Everyone knew it was coming, no one was surprised. But today the nation felt itself at war, in a way the country hasn't until this.
I ask only that all of you say a prayer for all the coalition forces, and especially for our men and women in uniform, who this very moment are risking their lives for their country and for all of us. The liberation of Kuwait has now entered a final phase.
Do you expect a quick victory?
Throughout the day, the President's men and politicians from all sides here have been saying they do expect a quick and decisive victory.
Today, the campaign is going very well. I think it's safe to say it's gone better than expected, but this is only the first day.
Very early we would know whether it was going to be either 3 or 4 days or 3 or 4 weeks. I think all indications are now that it's the 3 or 4 days.
To some extent, some of the best forces have not as yet been engaged, but so far at least it would appear that things are going very, very well. And
much optimism today. What are your fears?
What are my fears? Well, my fears are that there's too much optimism. You know, the operations are going well, but he still does have a very formidable army, and I think we need to be cautious about euphoria.
Everything has moved so quickly here in the past couple of days that not many questions have been asked of the President and his administration. Why didn't they give the Soviets in diplomacy more time? Did they misjudge Saddam Hussein, believing ultimately he would back down? A belief widely held here is that the White House had long since decided the only way to deal with Saddam was to destroy him. Although the President's chief advisor told us today the cue was Saddam's destruction of Kuwait.
He has now set fire to over half of the oil wells in Kuwait. And we have indications that he is virtually practicing genocide in Kuwait City. Another ecological disaster he's perpetrated. We've waited long enough.
In the end, was war the only option, or was it the option you preferred, a ground war?
No, it was not the option we preferred. What we preferred was for Saddam Hussein to do what we said he had to do from last fall.
But did you have any doubts about saying no to the Soviet proposal?
No, not really.
Do you think you misread Saddam Hussein, miscalculated?
I think it's possible that we thought he was a more logical, reasonable, and humane person than he turned out to be.
Right now, in the Persian Gulf, the ground war has begun.
For the moment, though, America is watching the war live from the Gulf.
I am with Egyptian forces right now, Peter. We are being told we simply have to move out of the way here. We're moving. We're moving. That's the tank that wants us to move, Peter.
Throughout the country this weekend, there have been parades and more pro-war demonstrations than anti. Only on military bases has this ground offensive been greeted with fear and trepidation.
Pray to God they all come home. I think it's wonderful to see so much support for all the guys, and I hope it continues, because they will need it.
How hopeful are you that you can avoid heavy Allied casualties?
I don't want to predict the situation with respect to casualties any more than I do with respect to time. To date, we have been very successful in keeping casualties to an absolute minimum since the very beginning of the campaign. That has continued as well through the first day of ground operation.
Outside the White House this morning, a small demonstration against the war, as there has been every Sunday since it began, and some arrests. Yet America at large is solidly behind the President and the troops, believing that their military high-tech superiority will overwhelm Iraq rapidly, sensing after this first day that the casualties might not be as heavy as they feared. Above all, they're saying at the White House, though, that America's living down Vietnam with a vengeance, determined that this time, this war will be a triumph. David Smith, ATN, Washington.
We'll be discussing things that came up in David Smith's report in just a moment, but first, at 1 minute to 1, we'll take a look at the headlines from the Gulf now. It was just 24 hours ago that the Allies' full-scale ground attack was launched. The Allied commander in the Gulf, General Norman Schwarzkopf, has claimed dramatic success in the land offensive. He's reported light Iraqi resistance and remarkably light Allied casualties. Only 11 US servicemen are so far reported dead. But General Schwarzkopf emphasized that the war was only in its early stages. Military sources now say that over 10,000 Iraqis have been taken prisoner. The Iraqis claim they were repelling the attacks and had inflicted heavy casualties on the Allies. Now, back to Washington. Keith Hampson, I ask you first of all, public opinion there is very solid behind the president, but we all know American public opinion can be very fickle too. The military men keep saying things are going to get, inevitably going to get harder, sticky, could be quite a long drawn-out thing. Do you think that public opinion will really be so forgiving for a very long time?
Well, I'm sure that's why they're going hard and fast in. I think, as you heard there, it has to be as quick and as decisive as possible. Just for that reason, you don't want the thing to drag on, the casualties to build up, as the Americans put it, the body bags going home, because the mood, I'm sure, would change. Vietnam isn't that far ago.
Dilip Hero, what do you think about the way American public opinion is reacting and holding up?
I think you just only look at the history. You know, if you take the Vietnam War, and these are facts that first 1,000 Americans killed, the popularity of the president came down by 15 points. And when it came to 10,000 Americans killed, it lost another 15 points. So I think this is something to say about how far the American public opinion will withstand this. And second thing worth remembering is that in America, at least when they do the polls, they have a separate polls. I mean, they have a combined poll. And then there's a breakdown among whites and amongst blacks. And every time the blacks are running about 40%, that is half of the white support. It's very interesting because in the American army, 1/3 of the soldiers are black. And all the congressmen, black congressmen, out of 22, 21 voted against the war. So and I also hope that since we are talking about opinion polls, that next time there's an opinion poll in this country, they would make a distinction. White support and the black and Asian support, or lack of it, in this country, so that we have a better understanding of what we're talking about.
I just wonder, when you talk about the votes of black congressmen, what I recall happened was that a lot of congressmen did vote against the war, you're quite right, but when the actual action got started, opinion swung pretty solidly behind the president. Have we any way of knowing, I'm just asking you, whether the black congressmen's support also changed, their proportion of those who might be inclined to support him in the hour of battle?
No, I think, no, see, again, if there is actual votes taken now, I'm simply saying that, before this fight has started, there were votes in the Senate and the House of Representatives. And in the Senate, worth remembering that 47 out of 99 senators voted against the war. Okay, now, when it comes, there is no black senator. Okay, and in the House, there are 22 black congressmen, I should say congresspersons, and 21 voted against. So I think that's worth remembering this. I say this particularly because, 5% of the population in this country is black or Asian. And I wish next time pollsters are working at it, they would make the breakdown, and so that we have a better understanding how people who, shall I say, emotionally think of a third world country out there. It's a third world country, I mean, Muslim country, a third world country. It is being, decimated and sent back to the Stone Age by 100,000 sorties. Can you imagine what it means?
But a lot of them are Arab and Muslim soldiers, and just the same way Saddam Hussein attacked a fellow Arab and Muslim nation. I mean, I don't think it should be assumed that therefore Muslims in this country are going to be against what we're doing there.
But see, since you mentioned this, the last poll that was taken, in fact published in The Sun and done by NOP, of British Muslims, the only poll that I know, 53% of British Muslims says don't know. Out of the 47%, 19% openly supported Saddam Hussein, and only the remaining 28% for the British government. What I would say, out of 53% who said don't know, most of them would like to say we openly support Saddam Hussein, but are too afraid to say so. Now, all this is speculation. What I'm really suggesting very seriously is that next time there's a public opinion poll about this war, I wish the pollsters will make a distinction, as Americans do, to look for the black and Asian vote.
Dr. Karsh, on this program, we've often heard, I think Dilip Hero said it before now, that the American and British public opinion, sort of majority, I suppose you really mean the sort of establishment opinion, has not been sympathetic or understanding of the Islamic and Muslim point of view on this whole thing, and that America was alienating enormous amounts of Islamic public opinion across the world. Do you think there's any sign at all in America that they are more sensitive, a bit more understanding of that public opinion as a result of what's happened in the last few weeks?
I'm not sure how sympathetic they were, but on the other hand, I do not really see what Billy Pirro meant by being more sympathetic. I mean, there is a point here. There was a naked aggression committed, and many Arab Muslim countries were threatened by Saddam Hussein, and the Americans stepped into the picture. And most of the Arab leaders, definitely in Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Syria, even King Hussein, who sided with Saddam Hussein, I'm not at all sure that he'll shed many tears for him. So I think there is not much sympathy towards Saddam Hussein in the Arab world, so I don't see why there should be much more sympathy in the West.
Well, looking at what's been going on, there have been the most enormous demonstrations in
Where? I mean, you go
Mauritania, Morocco, Yemen. If you could have a demonstration in Damascus, that would be a very big one, but you can't because it's a dictatorship. It's lied up with the Allies. If you could have a demonstration in Riyadh, there would have been one, but you can't because it's a dictatorship, which is on the side of the Allies. The same goes for Jeddah. All those, the countries where it's been possible to have demonstrations, there's been a general strike in Morocco, supported by the king.
What do you mean possible to demonstration? Isn't the regimes dictatorial in the countries that the demonstration? There are demonstrations because the regimes wanted these people to demonstrate. In Yemen, because